Fireside chat. It will be a fireside session. It will be a virtual one, looking at the focus on Ripple and MFS Africa to be specific, and looking at how to drive partnerships using crypto or partnerships with crypto adoption through real use cases. A virtual discussion between Brooks Entwistle, who is the Senior Vice President and Managing Director at Ripple, as well as Gwera Kiwana, who is a founder in residence for crypto at MFS Africa. So Brooks and Gwera, I can see you. Good morning. Not too sure if you can see me. Hi there, hi there. And I suppose I'll hand it over to you guys to kick off the session for us.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here. I can see Gwera on the screen as well. My name is Brooks Entwistle, and I am delighted to be addressing this important session today, but doing so with a great partner alongside in a discussion that we think will cover a lot of ground in the next 25 minutes. So we're going to dig right in, and we can introduce our companies as part of the dialogue that we'll get going, as opposed to spend too much time on that up front. But given you're early in the sessions there, I'm coming to you from Singapore. I'm sorry I can't be there live. I started the day in Seoul, and there's no way to get from Seoul to Joburg in the same day, as it turns out. But I look forward to being there soon. I know Gwera does as well. We're going to accomplish three things today in this panel, and we're going to do so in kind of rapid fire fashion. And Gwera, by the way, in addition to her incredible title, which is one of the great titles anywhere, founder in residence crypto at MFS Africa, is also a podcast host. And so I do this with great trepidation because she has a fantastic fancy mic in front of her and does this for a living. But we've had some practice beforehand, and we'll cover some ground here. We're going to cover three areas: the value of partnership, and talk a little bit about what partnership means as it relates to entering continents and new countries and some of the things we've thought about. We can talk about the fragmentation and some of the nuances of the African market, which you all are discussing all day and tomorrow, but from our perspective and from a crypto and blockchain perspective. But most importantly, we're going to spend time digging in on what the future holds, because that's what both of us and both of our organizations are truly excited about. And in a week where there's been some looking back around the world in our industry, we're all about looking forward and building, and we want to make this a builders type discussion. So with that, let's dig in. I'm going to ask two questions on each to Gwera, and I'll chime in a little bit from the Ripple standpoint as well, so make it conversational, but that's the structure that we'll follow. So let's start, Gwera, by just talking about, from your perspective at MFS Africa, and maybe in this question, introduce a little bit of the company for the group in the room. You're well known to that audience, I know, but why in the world would you think about working with a company like Ripple or someone coming into the continent cold like we were?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks so much for having us on this panel, Brooks. Really great to see you again. So MFS Africa, just a bit of background as to who we are for those who don't know already. We are the largest payments hub on the continent with really a historic excellence in mobile money interoperability. So we've done a phenomenal job over the years to connect mobile money networks across the continent with each other, not only to move money within Africa, but also in and out of the continent as well. So remittances, trade finance, all that. So MFS Africa, quite a beautiful beast. We do that. We also have a card processing business that's doing really great stuff across the continent, as well as Backseat in Nigeria, an agent network that offers various payment services. So really big company, lots of cool stuff going on. But what the heck are we doing in crypto, right? Like, what the heck am I doing here? Why do they have a crypto person at a pretty well-established, well-performing fintech? So we've entered crypto in a very sober and deliberate way in order to kind of drive our business and also drive growth for our business as well. But also for me, most importantly, and is to drive the next generation of African payments and African growth as well. So our mission is making borders matter less. by definition, crypto is borderless. It is 24 hours, and that is really something that we value quite heavily. So why Ripple? So why are Brooks and I in the same virtual room? I think that we align with Ripple on so many so many points of high level points around crypto. We all align on the fact that we're not interested in the speculative nature anymore really of crypto. I know that it's still quite hot and exciting in the global north, but in the global south, there is a really strong need for the utility of crypto, and we're actually seeing this happen. Like I like to use the example of when you look at a pathway in grass, a pathway that goes around grass, and then you see like a footpath that people have made in the dirt. That's kind of what we're seeing with crypto. There's people using it in ways that we never would have imagined years ago. And it's really great that we're partnering with Ripple to drive crypto enabled growth across the continent specifically. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, from our standpoint, you hit on some of the highlights of how we thought about part of you all as well. And this partnership was announced several months ago. There'll be more details that will be out shortly, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on it here. But from Ripple's perspective, as now a 10-year-old company that also started in the cross-border payments business. We've been around crypto and blockchain since the beginning with the XRP ledger and XRP, which of course is very different and separate from Ripple, the company, which was set out in the very beginning to build use cases and utility, which is a word I bet we use a lot in this chat. But we've done so, and we had to do so initially around fiat because candidly in 2015 and 2016, not a lot of big financial institutions around the world wanted to have the crypto discussion, even if you get in the door, much less the boardroom. And so we went out and found fast-moving, exciting fintechs and PSPs that were starting to willing to listen to a view of the world that cross-border payments or moving value across borders could use the blockchain and crypto to make things much more efficient and faster. And certainly our business has accelerated in the last 2 years, really, as the pickup of our product on-demand liquidity has happened. But we had a big blank on our geography because you can't have a global payments network without a full global footprint. And we pride ourselves on being in 55 countries, but we needed a partner to enter this exciting continent, and one with 54 countries of its own, and complexity that certainly without a local partner, it was simply too much to ask. So we're equally as excited about this, and we come at it with the same mission. So what brings me to question number 2, Gwera, to kind of continue on this partnership piece. Then we'll move on right after this to some more kind of continent discussion. But talk about the value of, and this is not a Ripple question, but just multinational players, whether or not they were in fintech or you're seeing in blockchain or crypto, what value actually do they add when they come on, given the footprint that you all have and the local ecosystem has, which we'll talk about, what do foreign players actually bring?
So what they bring really is global access, right? So the ability to open up the continent to the world. We're going to copy and paste that in Africa. This way, maybe really work because we have our own challenges. We live in a boda boda economy, right? So in Uganda and Kenya, we have these things called boda bodas. In Nigeria, they're called okadas, which are like motorcycles that are taxis. And it's a boda boda economy, right? You're not going to bring solutions that work in a Tesla economy to a boda boda economy, right? So usually pay as you go. It's quite nuanced, and we're going to talk about fragmentation in a bit. But it's really dangerous to come in with that mentality. But then there's other multinationals that come in with a more deliberate and thoughtful approach, like I'd say like what Ripple has done, and some other really great notable companies that I could think of right now have done that is with partnership, right? So partnering with a local expert, with finding local expertise, not just individuals, because that's great. I think you can definitely find individuals who are deep experts. But I think it's important to partner with entities that have a long track record of excellence, but also deep knowledge and understanding of the markets that they work in. At MFS Africa, we are scattered across the continent. We brush shoulders with our partners and our clients and our end users. Even a lot of us are our own end users, right? Like when I'm in Kenya and Uganda back home, I'm using mobile money every day. So we have a deep understanding, and if we couple that with multinationals, resources, their expertise, and ambition as well, and bring that together, some really cool stuff can happen.
It's great. I love that perspective on kind of the passion they bring, but also the realization on that front. And my prior role, I've been at Ripple for 2 years. Before that, I was at Uber for many years, and including working very deeply in Africa. And you're exactly right. Each of these ecosystems are very different. You come in kind of breaking glass. Sometimes it doesn't work the best way. But what I learned in that experience is some of the great innovation for that company came out of Africa. The kind of Uber bus was a Cairo product. Some of the great Uber boat was a Lagos product that I helped launch. And so you're right. And we're going to talk about payments, but I'm fully with you that each one of these is different, which is a perfect segue to the second topic and the third question for you, which is just take us on a super quick tour, to a couple of the big ecosystems around it. Maybe we just do kind of a West Africa, South Africa, your home in Nairobi, maybe as well, but just some thoughts you have on the complete differentiation of this market, overlying this complexity point as someone comes in to look at the continent.
The thing that frustrates me so much, right, about Africa and how people perceive the continent. And I hope that we are beyond this, right? So considering the continent as this monolith, right, and treating it as such, treating it with this idea that it's so massive and let's just treat it as one big blob. I'm totally against that, and I think that we're coming around to that kind of thinking that's a little bit more nuanced. But I like Africa is heavily fragmented. I think the term that I like to use often is that hyper fragmented, multiple different countries, like I said, multiple different cultures within those countries. And yes, people look at it as this monolith. Some people who are a little bit more nuanced will think of it as blobs of north, south, east, west. And even within those, it's quite nuanced and diverse. And I'd say that Africa, like in general, even with mobile money, it's not as ubiquitous in some parts of the continent as others, right? So one thing that I really like to always get people to take a step back with is to really just zero in on the regions and maybe zero in on that and then focus on what are the nuances that make up that region. I think one of the most interesting regions is the Francophone West Africa, one currency, but a block of countries that trade. There's a ton of trade that goes on within that region. And even that alone, you could write like a PhD thesis on this, right? So incredibly fragmented, especially with regards to payments. And, I think that mirrors the way the payments are set up, the way that payments are fragmented across the continent, also mirrors how movement happens across the continent. It is incredibly difficult to move between countries in Africa. And that I hope will change once we are able to solve the money movement piece. Immigration can hopefully follow, but yeah.
I love the hyper fragmented comments. I think that sums it up so nicely. And, clearly, as we think about, we obviously have ambitions to get in as many places as possible for our customers around the world. But we realize that even within that vast opportunity and the vast subregions, you've got to be focused on a couple of countries initially, which I know we're thinking about from our time getting to know each other on the partnership. Digging in though on this, the other thing I took away from time in Lagos and Cairo and places like this, and I just find it one of the most dynamic places to work on the ground, partly because of the entrepreneur ecosystem. And just the absolute innovation that happens. I mean, it feels, as active and exciting as any place in the world right now. And I sit in a place in Singapore and live here, which I think is also a very exciting place as well. And in Seoul, there's these places are popping up, but Africa has a buzz to it. But we have the benefit with you, Gwera, on just, you're a crypto expert. You've been your own entrepreneur. You've worked at big organizations, but how would you kind of, and this is hard to do in a couple minutes, but give us a state of the play from your side on just, crypto innovation. And I love it, the point that you kind of broke away initially. This is not about speculation, but talk about crypto utility and put it on a spectrum of how far along this journey are we?
Yeah, so I'd say I'll first explain like the difference between what we've seen in the global north and what we've seen in the global south, specifically Africa. So the global north, a lot of when I talk to my friends and people I know in North America, Europe, about crypto, a lot of people are crypto trading, right? They're trading, they're trying to earn a little bit, maybe buy a monkey NFT. But when you're on the ground on the continent, it's a different story. there is, like, again, we're going to use the word utility. There's a lot of need for the utility of this, and not only for, things like hedging for currency volatility. In Nigeria, we're seeing a lot of people do that, holding stable coins rather than holding naira. There's a lot of folks who are using it to hold their savings, right? Have their savings hold its value. Cross-border payments and P2P payments. There's a plethora of different use cases that we're seeing right now, and I think we're only at the 1% mark. We've only seen 1% of what is possible. If I could give like a scan of what's happening, I'd go from like the smallest scale to the largest scale, right? So on the smallest scale, there's various DAOs and community or grassroots organizations that are doing really, really cool stuff, like community organizing. In Kenya, I really want to shout out to Safari DAO. They're doing quite a lot. They're also partnered with, I think, the Ethereum Foundation, Polkadot as well, doing a lot of stuff to drive that ecosystem. So there's lots of NFT artists and folks building identity solutions, folks who are building liquidity, payment solutions as well, financial solutions in East Africa. So that is really exciting, and I that piece, the grassroots piece, because there's such a community-oriented mindset, which is also inherent within our continent. That community approach is really important, and I urge any investor in the room to really look at what's happening with DAOs, with these smaller communities. So we go from that to the startups, right? So there's lots of venture-backed startups that are doing really cool stuff in the space. Again, heavily focused on utility payments, right? So we're seeing a lot of startups driving, merchant acquiring, being able, providing P2P marketplaces, massive need for on and off ramps, for people, enabling people to get in and out of crypto. We're seeing really innovative solutions from guys like Phone Bank, who are doing using airtime as an on and off ramp into crypto, right? Such an innovative way to do it. So yeah, that's the startups. And then we go to the bigger side, right? So like the enterprises, the large scale ups, maybe companies that are in crypto. I can confidently say that every large fintech, at least on the continent, is in one way or another looking at crypto or touching crypto. They are all curious. The time for burying our heads in the sand has gone. MFS Africa sits in that camp as well. But it's now time for us to start, like, actually, again, entering the space in a very sober manner. So we as MFS Africa, we've decided to partner with the likes of Ripple and bring, affordable remittances and financial services to Africa. There's other folks who are quiet, that it's not public because it's a pretty, the regulatory environment is shaky, but I urge a lot of businesses on the enterprise side and large scale up side of businesses to actually engage with regulators and not only crypto non-natives but also crypto natives. So like for layer one blockchains, crypto natives like Ripple, to actually hopefully drive this next generation of growth on the continent. So that's what I see. That's a spectrum from grassroots to startups to scale ups and enterprise.
I love it. And the ecosystem approach to this is so important. I'm glad you hit on the regulatory front, because that's something we feel super strongly about at Ripple globally. There are some parts of the world, including our home country, the US, where it's a little bit more difficult to speak directly to the regulators, given the nature of that market there right now. But that is not true almost everywhere else in the world we operate. And we prefer a model where we can engage, come in, help educate. This is a journey that we're all going on together. We were just at a policy summit in Seoul yesterday that we organized to bring all players together to convene. And an event like this that you all are in the room for is absolutely critical, because that part of the dialogue has to be brought along at the same pace, if not faster. And so we're going to be alongside you at any point we can, and we want to be part of these dialogues with regulators in these key markets as well. Listen, we've only got a couple minutes left, but you're by definition of being a founder in residence, you're often, I'm sure, forced to think about the future. But let's dial this. Let's get just for fun. 3 years in crypto land is definitely a cycle or two or three, but that's a ways down the road. Take us 3 years down the road. We're back on stage here, and what are we talking about? What's really broken out here on the crypto front?
Wow. I would say 3 years from now on stage will be a regulator as well. There will be someone from a regulatory body sitting like side by side with us, having these discussions about how to drive this ecosystem forward and this technology forward. I think between now and then, there's going to be a huge leap that's going to be made by the regulators and regulatory bodies. I think a lot of times people think of them as these evil fund ruiners. No, they just have really hard jobs. You know, their jobs are to protect consumers, protect investors, protect businesses, protect their economies as well. And we're seeing now a really concerted effort and push to engage regulators, deliberate, engagement with regulators and policymakers across the continent. So that's one thing that I'm fairly hopeful we will see in 3 years. Within 3 years, I'd say, with regards to payments and blockchain in Africa, we're going to see seamless money movement. And with that comes so many other things, like seamless money movement will result in a lot more trade, a lot more business intra-Africa, but also opening up the continent to the global market. We have one of the youngest, actually the youngest population at scale, and rapidly growing. So Africa's poised, like really, of those who've heard this before, I'm sorry to keep banging on about this, but we're poised to really drive a lot of global growth. And in 3 years, we're just going to start seeing the tip of that happening. And then I think lastly is going to be a lot of, I think we're going to see a lot of homegrown heroes, a lot of African companies who are going to rise to the challenge to serve their customers and actually serve the ecosystems in which we exist. And have that niche specific expertise that serves their specific niche. So like, be it the gaming ecosystem, be it the creator economy, be it the traders. Like, I am fairly confident that in a few years, with regards to payments, we're going to see a lot of different products or services or even ecosystems form around those kinds of those verticals on the continent.
Awesome. That I love the kind of the hopeful and optimistic nature of that, especially given this week around the world in some of the markets. So fantastic place to end. We are super excited to be a part of this at Ripple, to be a part of this partnership. I'm looking forward to see all we can do together, and we're grateful because as a 10-year-old company that operates globally, we know what we're good at, we know what we need help on, and we're looking forward to going deep into this incredible market with you all at our side. So I'm going to turn it back to the organizers. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I know both of us are on social, both of us looking forward to taking any follow-up questions that may come off stage post this. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks once again to the both of you. I think that was a really fascinating presentation and a practical look at what partnerships in the space between players does look like. Gwera, I just love the way that you really broke down the differences in the use cases of crypto right now between the global south and the global north, but really emphasizing the practicality and the importance of crypto in Africa as an inflation hedge, as a tool for encouraging further savings, as something that can facilitate further cross-border payments as well as remittances. So thanks to the both of you. We're really informed.